The channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Staltari, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last year or so, I've been featuring each fille du roi, or king's daughter, and getting to know their stories a little bit better. There are over 700 of them. I plan on doing all of them. We are now on episode 164, if you can believe it. We've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go. Before we begin, let me show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know. It's called subscribe, like, and notify. The next three are ways to help the channel grow. Coffee, Etsy, and Patreon are all ways of showing your support. If you want to have a look at it, it's in the notes below. I provided the links. Let's get started. Today's episode, number 164, is on Francoise Brunet, and she is a viewer request. I do not have her in my file, so let's get to know Francoise a little bit better. So Francoise was born in 1635 in the commune of Quimper in France, in the region of Brittany, which is an area that I'm just fascinated with. She is her region is Brittany, but the département, as we call it, or the county, is, as you can see on the left, on the right, last right photo, it is Finistère, is the département that she belongs to, and it is kind of hovering around the sea, depending on where her location is. Her parents are unknown to me, but I do know that at 19, she married a man named Martin Durand, and she was widowed at 28. And so she brings with her not only, that incredible history of Brittany with her, but it was a very particular region, and it was definitely a place where she would have known the history, and she would have had she would be different than the Parisians, let me say. She would be probably much more authentic, probably much more real. Brittany was an area that had been, ravaged many times over. So I suspect that she came with her own kind of mindset, if you will. I just get that feeling. So for those of you who know Brittany, might share with me your impressions of the people of Brittany and what they're like. I just get that sense. So she's a widow at 28. She has 2 children. What does she do next? So Francoise presumably would have heard about the program Fille du Roi, and would have been either recruited or have applied. But she was on that very first boat, Le Phoenix de Flosage, and that was in 1663. She was a pioneer to be all pioneers, and the fact that she was a widow with 2 small children adds only to her strength and her determination to persevere. So the groom she selected and who selected her, his name was Théodore Sureau, and he was born in 1627 in Malaise, France. His parents were Denis Sureau and Marie Laguisse. Now you can see by the map that he was part of the region of Pays de la Loire, and inside that region, le département, or the county, is Vendée. This place, Malaise, was once an island in the Marais, and until the monks of the Malaise Abbey dug canals in the 13th century, remains of the seawall are still present, and canoe tours of the canal are a regular attraction to tourists. The ruins of the former Malaise Abbey, dating from the 11th to the 14th century, which you can see there on the left of your screen, are a listed monument. And I just wanted to point out the church where Théodore would have been baptized is listed here. Église Saint-Pierre, I believe, is the name. We do not know when Théodore comes to New France, but we do know that as of 1659, he does acquire a grant of land from Jean de Lauzon himself, and begins, presumably, to lay claim and begin awaiting the potential for a bride. And that is where our fille du roi enters the picture. So from 1559 to 1663, it's about 4 short years, enough time to build a little kingdom, if you will, for his future bride. So on October 3rd, 1663, Theodore and Francoise were married in Quebec City. This is a copy of their marriage record. So a short 4 months after she arrived, essentially, less than 4 months, she was a married lady with 2 of her children. So it says to us that Theodore was not only a patient man, but he also accepted his wife and her 2 children coming into his life. So they settle in a place called Lauzon. Remember, he got the grant from Jean de Lauzon. So let's talk a little bit about this incredible place. It had been settled back in 1636 by a man named Lauzon, who was basically an absentee seigneur. His son, Jean de Lauzon, would actually take it over in 1651 and have it for about 10 years. This is the person who would have granted the land to Theodore. And then the third son, Charles de Lauzon, would take it over and would have it for about 30 years. So the Lauzon family obviously was integral to the history of this place. And it's during the tenure of Charles de Lauzon that Lauzon grew and became a true place to call home. These maps are amazing maps of the seigneurie and how it was laid out. One of the principal people who founded this place was called Guillaume Couture, which of course is not our principal story, but I need to share it with you because he really was the true founder of Lauzon, as he was the first inhabitant. He was originally, very interesting story, he was originally a Jesuit. He was an extraordinary man who at one point in his life said, I need to leave the priesthood. And he was working with the Indians, doing so many things, but he had so many jobs as a priest, but he decided he wanted to settle down and marry, which he did. The story of Lauzon would not be what it is without this one man. And knowing that he was there when our people are there makes it even more special. Some of the founding families of Lauzon, including our people, are people with the names Carrier, Brulotte, Gay, Bourralé, Végin, Huard, Bourget. And these are names. And speaking of names, when you're looking for Lauzon, I want you to look upon on this PowerPoint slide and tell by any other name. So it goes by so many names: Cap de Lévis, Côte de Lauzon, Saint-Joseph de Pointe-Lévis, Saint-Joseph de Lévis, Point-Lévis, Point-Levi. The last one, it was actually an English when the British took over. They kind of named it that. This is a picture of the church that was eventually founded there. And then I've clipped the 1681 census where, I'm sorry, not the 1681, the 1667 census when Theodore and Francoise had established themselves. We see her 2 daughters, Jeanne and Francoise, and then their child, Geneviève, who is 2 years old. They have 2 beasts, and they have 8 arpents en valeur, which is about 5 to 6 acres of land. So as you can see, it was a very small family, but Jeanne Durand, remember that was her first her children from her first marriage. She would go on to marry Louis Bégin and have 12 children, 7 of whom made it to adulthood. Françoise would go on to marry Gabrielle Sanson and have 9 children, 8 of whom would make it to adulthood. Geneviève would marry Jean Miranda and would have 4 children, only 1 of whom would make it. She would then marry Thomas Gass and have 10 children, but only 2 survived. So, you know what, as you're watching this, I would love for you to tell me if any of you are the descendants of Geneviève, because that would be very remote, like absolutely. But Jeanne and Françoise, I would assume, had the greatest hold on the descendancy line. But if you're a descendant of Geneviève, please make the comment below. Tragically, Françoise would die on the 20th of July, 1668. She never made it to the 1681 census. She was only 33 years old. And so she and Theodore would have been married but a mere 5 years at this time. Theodore would live on for another 9 years, and he married Fille du Roi, Perrine Etrou, but he did not have any children. he died on the 4th of October, 1677, at the age of 50. So these three daughters grew up essentially not having a mother or a father. So I just can imagine, the trajectory of their lives. But certainly they persisted because Francoise would go on to have, through the Durand line, would have 133 descendants as of 1729. And that includes Geneviève's portion of it. But I just marvel at the fact that out of three girls, they would have had 133 descendants. So remarkable, remarkable achievement. As always, I like to share my resources. Number one, La Société des Filles du Roi is a society that you can join if you have a proven lineage. They will help you actually make that link, if you will, and you can join with paperwork and that good stuff. If you don't care to join, you can still still use the website, and definitely it is worth your time because it lists all the filles du roi, the soldiers, the Gagne regiment, and all of that. So you need to have a look at that. Quebec Genealogical Society is a little bit newer to the scene, but no less important when you're evaluating Quebec. We have Nos Origines, which is another excellent site, free. We have Généalogie Québec, which is not free, but it is, for me, the most important part of my toolkit, if you will. We have Migration, which is another free site, although you are invited to contribute. And then we have the Facebook site, Filles du Roi Descendants. So all of those, and please, if you have any other websites that you think are pertinent to Filles du Roi, please let me know. And with that, we end episode 164. I'm always marveling at the fact that some ladies that came across were only here for such a short time, like a bright shining star, and they sacrificed and came across, did that perilous journey, and got married, established something. In Francoise's, choices, or in her story, she did not make it. And so it's even sadder that she didn't get to see her grandchildren and all of that, and her daughters were bereft of a mother. So I think it's a particularly sad story, but we are so grateful. Those who are the descendants of Francoise Brunet, can be so eternally grateful that this lady came to our shores and contributed. She contributed her two daughters from France, and then also the marriage to Theodore Suroux was also part of that. So, and to the history of Lausanne. So for all that, and for her very brief time here on our shores, we thank her, we bless her memory, and we are grateful that she came to our shores. Until I see you on episode 165, au revoir.